Listen closely, because what I'm about to show you has been hidden in plain sight for decades. This man has shaped the culture you live in, and his influence is pure darkness. His name was Aleister Crowley. He called himself the Beast 666. He was an occultist, a ceremonial magician, and one of the most openly anti-Christian figures of the 20th century. His goal? To rewrite morality, destroy the idea of God, and replace it with a spiritual system that worships the self, while opening the door to demonic influence. Crowley created a philosophy called subliminal. Its central rule was simple: do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. In other words, no higher authority, no God's law, no moral boundaries. Just your will, no matter who it hurts. You might think, okay, that's just some creepy old guy from 100 years ago. But the truth is, some of the most famous names in music, fashion, and entertainment have followed his teachings, quoted his words, and even placed his face on their album covers. And in his own writing, Crowley promoted things so disturbing, I have to be careful phrasing them. He taught that the most potent spiritual energy can be gained by destroying innocence, especially the very young. He taught that this will give a man power. This is why the Bible says, "What fellowship does light have with darkness?" Crowley's entire system was about mixing light with darkness, calling it alchemy, calling it balance, but God calls it corruption. Light and dark cannot be mixed. One will always overcome the other. The Beatles actually put his face on their album cover, calling Aleister Crowley their hero. Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page was obsessed with Crowley. He even bought Crowley's old home, the Boleskine House, where he performed occult rituals. Jay-Z has worn a hoodie with Crowley's slogan on it, "Do what thou wilt." That's not just random fashion. That's the philosophy Crowley created. But Crowley's influence was not limited to entertainment. It reached into science, religion, and even government circles. One of his most devoted followers was Jack Parsons, a rocket scientist, co-founder of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and a high-ranking member of Crowley's occult order, the OTO. Parsons was deeply involved in ritual magic, attempting to open portals and summon entities from other realms. In 1946, Parsons partnered with L. Ron Hubbard, a man who would go on to found Scientology. Together, they performed the infamous Babylon working ritual, based on Crowley's teachings, in an effort to manifest a so-called moon child, an incarnation of an occult prophecy. Crowley's moon child prophecy was more than just an idea, it was a goal. In his writings, he described creating a child conceived and raised through occult rituals, meant to be a vessel for a spiritual entity that would help usher in a new age. Parsons and Hubbard believed they could make this a reality through their Babylon working ritual. They weren't just playing with strange ideas, they were trying to manifest the very thing Crowley described. And whether or not they succeeded, the mindset behind it is telling. This wasn't just about magic, it was about engineering a future generation to fit a dark spiritual agenda. And here's where it gets interesting. While there's no evidence Wernher von Braun had any link to Crowley, NASA's story still connects to mainstream culture in surprising ways. Von Braun, a former Nazi scientist brought to America through Operation Paperclip, actually worked directly with Walt Disney in the 1950s to produce films like Man in Space and Man and the Moon. These weren't just fun, harmless cartoons. They were shaping public imagination about space for decades. And when you look at Disney's legacy, there's another layer people don't like to talk about. The repeated subliminal sexual imagery hidden in his animated films, scenes in The Lion King, The Little Mermaid, and others have contained sexual references that most kids wouldn't consciously notice, but their minds would still register. So you have to ask why. Why hide that in content for children? It lines up disturbingly well with Crowley's belief that corrupting innocence was a form of power. It's not just coincidence, it is a pattern. And Parsons' story didn't just end in history books. Hollywood turned it into entertainment. The TV series Strange Angel dramatized his life, portraying his deep involvement in Crowley's occultism alongside his role in pioneering rocketry. They packaged ritual magic, sex magic, and Luciferian philosophy into a binge-worthy drama, normalizing and even glamorizing the exact darkness Crowley preached. That's not just art, that's agenda setting. And here's a fact. Hollywood is literally named after the wood of holly, used by witches and warlocks to make magic wands. It baffles me that people can know this and still let themselves and their kids be influenced by these celebrities. Support independent artists. Listen to country music, gospel music, listen to music from another culture, another language. But know this, anything coming from Hollywood is not harmless. In Empire State of Mind, Jay-Z raps, "Hail Mary to the city, you're a virgin." And Jesus can't save you. Life begins when the church ends. That's not just art, that's rejecting Christ. And in No Church in the Wild, what's a God to a non-believer who don't believe in anything? Another dismissal of faith. And in Kanye West's song Monster, Jay-Z says, "I rape and pillage your village, women and children." That is the glorification of destruction, exactly the kind of darkness Crowley promoted. Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places." This is bigger than just one artist. It's a spiritual war. Crowley's system flips God's truth upside down, making evil look good and good look evil. He taught the alchemical marriage, merging light with darkness, but God says keep them separate. These patterns, the symbols, the lyrics, they're not random. They're the same belief system repeating itself. Satan never creates, he only corrupts. It's all preparing the world to accept the counterfeit, the Antichrist, by rejecting the real thing. From false miracles to alien narratives, the goal is global deception. And if you've been trained to blur good and evil, you'll believe the lie. You don't have to believe in the occult for it to affect you. It's already in your music, your shows, your feeds. The question is, will you keep letting it in? Ephesians 5:11 says, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." Knowledge is power. When our eyes are wide shut, we can be easily manipulated. But with our eyes wide open, we can't be controlled. Jesus said, "The eye is the lamp of the body." If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. He meant spiritual sight, seeing clearly so darkness can't sneak in. Insanity is sanity in an insane world. If you can sit back and continue to consume this corruption and find nothing wrong with it, that's your choice. But please don't call the so-called conspiracy theorists crazy. Because if you're comfortable in this insane world, you might be part of the problem. John 17:16, and Jesus said, "They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world." Romans 12:2, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." God is free. God is every human's birthright, literally the only thing in life that's truly free. Choose Him while there's still time.